They wanted to become gods, worshipped on stage, immortalized in magazines, paid millions for the most extreme physique on the planet. But here's the truth about becoming a god. You have to destroy the human first. In the early days, bodybuilding was simple. Lift heavy, build strength, but then money flooded in. Sponsorships, life-changing prize pools. Overnight, bodybuilding became an arms race. Who could get bigger, more shredded? Who could push the human body past limits nature never intended? These men injected, swallowed, and pumped anything that promised one more inch of muscle, and they won. They became legends. But every single one paid a price no trophy could ever be worth. Because when these giants finally fell, and doctors cut them open on cold autopsy tables, what they found wasn't human anymore. This is what doctors found when bodybuilding legends died. Number 1. Andreas Münzer. If you've ever wondered how far a human being can push their body before it completely shuts down, Andreas Münzer found that limit. They called him the king of conditioning. Nobody in the history of bodybuilding had ever achieved what he did. When Andreas stepped on stage, you could see every single muscle fiber under his paper-thin skin. Veins covered his entire body like a roadmap. His body fat percentage? Some say it dropped below 3%. He looked like a living anatomy chart. But here's the problem. The human body isn't designed to function at 3% body fat. Your organs need fat to survive. Your brain needs fat to work. Your heart needs fat to pump. Andreas didn't care. He wanted to be the most shredded man alive. And in 1996, he achieved it. But that same year, during a guest posing in Germany, something went wrong. Andreas collapsed backstage. Severe stomach pain, internal bleeding. They rushed him to the hospital, and what doctors found inside him, it was like opening up a corpse. His liver had almost completely disintegrated. It was covered in tumors, so damaged that pieces of it were literally falling apart in the doctor's hands. His kidneys had failed. His heart was barely functioning. Even his blood had turned thick like sludge because of extreme dehydration. The doctors tried everything. Transfusions, emergency surgery. But Andreas's body was too far gone. He died on the operating table. He was only 31 years old. When the autopsy report came out, even experienced medical examiners were shocked. They'd never seen a human body destroy itself like this while the person was still alive. One doctor said it looked like Andreas had been dead for weeks, not hours. This is what happens when you take shredded too far. Number 2, Rich Piana. Rich Piana didn't hide anything. While other bodybuilders pretended they were natural, Rich looked straight into the camera and said, "You want arms like mine? You want to weigh 290 pounds of pure muscle? Then stop lying to yourself. This isn't chicken and rice, this is steroids. Lots of them." He became a legend not because he won competitions, but because he told the truth nobody else would. Rich had his own brand, millions of followers, a lifestyle that screamed excess, massive meals, massive workouts, massive everything. His arms measured 23 inches. But in August 2017, Rich's girlfriend heard a sound no one ever wants to hear, a loud thud. She ran into the bathroom and found Rich Piana collapsed on the floor, unconscious, not breathing. His massive 290-pound body just shut down. Paramedics arrived. They tried to revive him, but Rich's heart had already stopped. They got it beating again, barely. He was rushed to the hospital and placed in a medically induced coma. For 2 weeks, Rich Piana lay there. His organs were failing one by one. His brain showed almost no activity. And then his family made the decision. They pulled the plug. Rich Piana was 46 years old, but here's where it gets dark. When they found him in that bathroom, police discovered something else. 20 bottles of steroids, crushed white powder residue near his body. And when doctors examined him, they found his heart was massively enlarged, almost double the size of a normal human heart. His liver, damaged beyond repair, scarred and swollen from years of pushing compounds through it. The official cause of death? Sudden cardiac arrest due to an enlarged heart. But everyone knew what really killed him. Decades of telling the truth about steroids. While his body was screaming at him to stop, Rich always said, "Whatever it takes." And in the end, it took everything. Number 3, Dallas McCarver. Dallas McCarver was only 26 years old when his heart stopped beating. 26. Most people at 26 are just starting their careers. Dallas, he was already being called the future of bodybuilding. Standing 6 feet 1 inch and weighing over 300 pounds in the off-season, he was a giant among giants. His nickname was Big Country, and when you saw him, you understood why. But on August 22nd, 2017, Dallas was at home eating dinner. Suddenly, he started choking. His girlfriend tried to help him. Heimlich maneuver. Nothing worked. She called 911. By the time paramedics arrived, Dallas was already gone. They found him face down in his food. The official cause? Asphyxiation. He choked to death. But that's not where the story ends. That's where it gets terrifying. Because when they performed the autopsy, they didn't just find a guy who accidentally choked. They found a walking time bomb that was about to explode anyway. Dallas's heart weighed 690 grams. Let me put that in perspective for you. A normal adult male heart weighs around 300 to 350 grams. Dallas's heart was double that size. It had grown so big that it could barely pump blood anymore. But it gets worse. They found his kidneys were diseased. His thyroid was malfunctioning. His testosterone levels were over 55 times higher than normal, and his liver showed severe damage. The doctors said even if Dallas hadn't choked that night, he probably had months left, maybe weeks. His cardiovascular system was on the verge of complete collapse. Here's the most disturbing part. They found evidence that Dallas had suffered multiple small heart attacks in the weeks before he died. His body was literally trying to shut down, and he just kept pushing. At 26, Dallas McCarver had the organs of a 70-year-old man dying of heart disease. He thought he had decades left to dominate the sport. His body knew different. Number 4. Nasser El-Sonbati. Nasser El-Sonbati had a genius-level IQ. He spoke 7 languages fluently. He studied history and sociology at university. He could debate philosophy, politics, and science with professors. People who met him were shocked that someone this intellectually gifted had chosen bodybuilding as a career. But Nasser didn't just choose bodybuilding, he tried to conquer it. At his peak, Nasser weighed 315 pounds of solid muscle at 5 feet 11 inches. He had one of the most complete physiques in the sport's history. In 1997, he came second at the Mr. Olympia, losing to Dorian Yates by the smallest margin. Many thought Nasser should have won. He was brilliant, he was massive, and he knew exactly what he was doing to his body. That's what made his story so tragic. On March 20th, 2013, Nasser El-Sonbati died of acute heart and kidney failure. He was 47 years old, but unlike the others, Nasser saw it coming. In the years before his death, friends noticed he'd gone silent. The man who never stopped talking, who could argue about anything for hours, suddenly disappeared from public life. No interviews, no appearances, no social media. Why? Because Nasser's kidneys were shutting down. He'd been on dialysis for months. His heart was struggling. His body, that magnificent machine he'd built over decades, was breaking down piece by piece. And here's the worst part. Nasser knew the science. He understood human physiology better than most doctors. He knew exactly what steroids, growth hormone, and insulin were doing to his organs. But he did it anyway. When they found him, his body had swollen with fluid retention. His kidneys had stopped filtering waste. Toxins were building up in his blood. His heart, exhausted from years of pumping blood through 315 pounds of muscle, finally gave out. The smartest man in bodybuilding, killed by the one equation he couldn't solve: how to build a superhuman body without destroying the human inside. Nasser once said in an interview, "I know what I'm doing. I accept the consequences." He was right about both. Number 5. Mike Münzer. Mike Münzer didn't believe in working out 6 hours a day. While everyone else in the gym was doing 30 sets per muscle group, Mike did 3. While others trained 6 days a week, Mike trained 3. He called his system heavy-duty training, and it was based on pure logic and scientific principles. Mike had a philosophy degree. He read Ayn Rand. He questioned everything. And in 1979, he achieved what many called a perfect score at the Mr. Olympia prejudging, the only bodybuilder in history to do it. But the next year, 1980, everything fell apart. Mike competed at Mr. Olympia again. He thought he'd win. Instead, he didn't even place in the top 5. Arnold Schwarzenegger, who came out of retirement, took first place in what many called the most controversial decision in bodybuilding history. Mike was destroyed, not just disappointed, mentally shattered. He quit bodybuilding completely, disappeared. For years, nobody knew where he was or what he was doing. When he finally came back into public life in the 90s, something had changed. Mike looked different, not just older, sick. His face was gaunt. His eyes had dark circles. People who knew him said he'd become paranoid, isolated, consumed by conspiracy theories. On June 10, 2001, Mike Münzer died in his sleep. He was 49 years old. 2 days later, his brother Ray Münzer, also a professional bodybuilder, died in his sleep too. Same house, same week. The official cause for Mike? Heart complications. But when you dig deeper, the picture gets darker. Mike had been suffering from severe heart disease for years. His arteries were clogged. His heart was enlarged. But he refused treatment. He'd become so distrustful of doctors, so isolated from the world, that he just let himself die. Friends said in his final years, Mike barely left his apartment. He was taking sleeping pills constantly. His heart medication sat unused on the counter. Here's what made Mike's death different from the others. It wasn't just the steroids that killed him. It was the destruction of watching his dream get stolen, the mental collapse that followed, the years of isolation and paranoia that turned a philosophical genius into a shell of himself. Mike Mentzer's body gave out, but his mind broke first. Number 6. Dan Puckett. Dan Puckett wasn't famous. He didn't win Mr. Olympia. He wasn't on magazine covers. Most people outside hardcore bodybuilding circles had never heard his name. But on February 11th, 2007, Dan Puckett did something that sent shockwaves through the entire bodybuilding community. He walked into his bathroom. He was 22 years old. Dan had everything going for him. He was a college student, a competitive bodybuilder with a bright future. Friends described him as funny, kind, always smiling. But behind that smile, something was eating him alive. In the weeks before his death, Dan had come off a steroid cycle. And when bodybuilders come off steroids, their testosterone crashes. Mood swings, depression, anxiety. It's called post-cycle depression, and it's brutal. But Dan's family didn't know that. They just saw their son getting quieter, more withdrawn. They thought it was stress from school. The night before he died, Dan wrote in his journal, pages and pages about how he felt trapped, how he didn't recognize himself anymore, how the person in the mirror wasn't him. His parents found the journal after he was gone. Here's what makes Dan's story so disturbing. The autopsy showed his organs were fine. His heart was normal size. No liver damage, no kidney failure. Physically, Dan Puckett was perfectly healthy. But mentally, the steroids had rewired his brain chemistry so severely that he couldn't see a way out. The hormonal crash had triggered a depression so deep, so dark, that a 22-year-old kid with his whole life ahead of him chose to end it. Dan's father later said in an interview, "My son didn't die from kidney failure or heart disease. He died because nobody told him what these drugs would do to his mind." After Dan's death, his story became a warning in the bodybuilding community. Not about heart attacks or liver failure, about the silent killer nobody talks about. What happens to your brain when you mess with your hormones? Dan Puckett's organs were perfect, but he still died from bodybuilding. Number 7. Greg Kovach. Greg Kovach was the biggest human being bodybuilding had ever seen. Not the most shredded, not the most aesthetic, the biggest. Off-season, Greg weighed 420 pounds. His arms measured 25 inches cold. His chest was 70 inches around. When he walked into a room, people literally stepped back in shock. To put this in perspective, most Mr. Olympia winners compete around 250 to 270 pounds. Greg was 150 pounds heavier than them. He wasn't just a bodybuilder. He was a science experiment gone wrong. Greg never won Mr. Olympia. He knew he was too big, too freaky even for a sport that celebrated freaks. But he didn't care about trophies. He cared about one thing, being the largest human being on the planet, and he achieved it. But in November 2013, Greg Kovach collapsed at home. Heart attack. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital, but his heart had already sustained massive damage. He died a few days later. He was 44 years old. Now here's where it gets insane. Greg's wife later revealed that in the months before his death, Greg had been having heart problems constantly. Chest pains, shortness of breath. His feet were swelling so badly he could barely walk. Doctors had warned him multiple times. They told him his heart couldn't support 420 pounds of body mass. They begged him to lose weight, to stop the cycles, to save his life. Greg refused because losing weight meant losing his identity. He wasn't Greg Kovach, decent bodybuilder. He was Greg Kovach, the biggest bodybuilder ever. Without that, who was he? So he kept pushing, kept eating 10,000 calories a day, kept injecting, kept growing. And his heart, this fist-sized muscle that was designed to pump blood through a 180-pound man, was forced to push blood through 420 pounds of tissue. Imagine your heart working 3 times harder every single second for years. That's what Greg asked of his body. The autopsy showed his heart was so enlarged and damaged that doctors were amazed he'd lived as long as he did. One cardiologist who reviewed the report said Greg's heart looked like it belonged to an 80-year-old obese man who'd had multiple heart attacks. Greg Kovach wanted to be remembered as the biggest, and he got his wish, but the cost was dying decades before he should have. Number 8, Franco Columbu. Franco Columbu was different. At 5 feet 5 inches and 185 pounds on stage, he was tiny compared to the other bodybuilders. But what Franco lacked in height, he made up for in something nobody else had. Raw, brutal, terrifying strength. Franco didn't just win Mr. Olympia twice. He also won World's Strongest Man competitions. He deadlifted over 750 pounds. He could bench press 525 pounds. There's a famous video of him carrying a refrigerator on his back up a flight of stairs. And perhaps most famously, there's footage of Franco blowing into a hot water bottle until it explodes like a balloon. This wasn't a bodybuilder. This was a superhero trapped in a small Italian man's body. But Franco was also smart. He became a licensed chiropractor. He understood the human body better than most. And unlike many of his peers, Franco didn't abuse steroids. He was always moderate, always careful. That's why everyone thought Franco would live forever. On August 30th, 2019, Franco was doing what he loved, swimming in the ocean near his home in California. He was 78 years old and still active, still strong. Then without warning, his heart stopped. People on the beach saw him go under. They pulled him out. Paramedics tried to revive him. But Franco Columbu, the man who could blow up hot water bottles with his lungs, who could deadlift 3 times his body weight, was gone. Now here's what makes Franco's death different from everyone else on this list. He did everything right. He didn't abuse drugs. He stayed active his whole life. He ate well. He listened to his body. He even became a doctor to understand how to take care of himself. But it didn't matter, because the damage from his competitive years, even though he was careful, had already been done. Decades of forcing his heart to pump blood through 185 pounds of solid muscle had left scars. His cardiovascular system had been under stress for so long that even 33 years after retirement, it finally gave out. Franco's friends, including Arnold Schwarzenegger, were devastated. Arnold said at his funeral, "Franco was my best friend, my training partner, my brother. I thought we'd grow old together." The autopsy revealed what everyone feared: heart disease, arterial blockage, the kind of damage that builds slowly over decades and hides until the day it doesn't. Franco Columbu proved that even if you do everything right, bodybuilding at that level still takes its toll. Even the smart ones don't escape. Number 9, Mohamed Benazisa. Mohamed Benazisa did something in bodybuilding that seemed impossible. He was from Algeria. No money, no sponsors, no connections. In the 1980s, bodybuilding was dominated by Americans and Europeans with access to the best gyms, the best coaches, the best everything. Mohamed had none of that, but he had heart and hunger and a work ethic that terrified everyone who trained with him. By 1990, Mohamed had earned his IFBB Pro card and was competing against the best in the world. He wasn't the biggest guy on stage, but his conditioning was insane, shredded to the bone. Every muscle fiber visible. In October 1992, Mohamed traveled to Holland to compete in the Grand Prix Netherlands. He wanted to win, badly. This was his chance to prove himself on the European stage. So Mohamed did what many bodybuilders do before a show. He cut water, drastically, diuretics. No water for days. He wanted to look as dry and shredded as possible. His skin had to be paper thin. Every vein had to pop. Mohamed stepped on stage. He looked incredible, placed well in the competition. But backstage after the show ended, something went wrong. Mohamed collapsed. His body started convulsing. Foam came out of his mouth. Other bodybuilders screamed for help. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but Mohamed's body was already shutting down. His heart was beating irregularly. His organs were in shock. They rushed him to the hospital. Doctors worked frantically to save him. But at 10:20 p.m. on October 4th, 1992, Mohamed Benazisa was pronounced dead. He was 33 years old. The autopsy revealed the cause: cardiovascular collapse brought on by severe dehydration and electrolyte imbalance. Translation: Mohamed had drained so much water from his body that his blood turned thick. His heart couldn't pump it. His kidneys couldn't filter it. His entire system just stopped. But here's the truly horrifying part. Mohamed died because he did exactly what every bodybuilding coach tells you to do before a show: cut water, take diuretics, get dry. He followed the playbook perfectly, and it killed him. After Mohamed's death, his family tried to sue the Bodybuilding Federation. They wanted answers. How could their son die from preparing for a competition the same way everyone else did? The Federation's response: these are professional athletes. They know the risks. Mohamed Benazisa came from nothing and sacrificed everything to compete at the highest level. And the sport he loved killed him on stage for a plastic trophy. Number 10. Aziz Shevarshian. Ziz wasn't just a bodybuilder, he was a movement. Aziz Shevarshian started as a skinny kid from Australia who got bullied for being weak. So he walked into a gym and decided to transform himself. And transform he did. Within a few years, Ziz had built a physique that made him an internet legend. Shredded abs, broad shoulders, that iconic cocky smile. But more than his body, it was his attitude that made him famous. You mirroring, bro? Ziz didn't take bodybuilding seriously like the old guard. He made it fun. He danced shirtless at raves. He posted videos flexing in random places. He told young guys around the world, we're all gonna make it. Millions followed him. Ziz became the face of a new generation of fitness. He proved you didn't need to be a pro bodybuilder to inspire people. You just needed confidence and abs. But on August 5th, 2011, Ziz was on vacation in Thailand with his brother. They went to a sauna after a long day, and Ziz never came out. His brother found him collapsed on the floor, heart attack. Paramedics tried to revive him, but it was too late. Aziz Shevarshian was 22 years old. The world was stunned. How does a 22-year-old kid in peak physical condition just die in a sauna? The autopsy revealed the truth. Ziz had an undiagnosed congenital heart defect. His heart had been damaged since birth. His family had a history of heart problems. But here's the thing, that defect might never have killed him if he hadn't been taking steroids. Ziz had admitted using steroids, trenbolone, clenbuterol, the same compounds that stress your heart and raise your blood pressure. For someone with a normal heart, it's dangerous. For someone with Ziz's condition, it was a death sentence waiting to happen. The sauna, the heat, the dehydration, the stress on his already damaged heart, it all combined into the perfect storm. And just like that, the guy who told everyone, "We're all gonna make it," didn't make it himself. What makes Ziz's death so painful is that he inspired an entire generation. Even today, over a decade later, people still post his photos with the caption, "R.I.P. King." His legacy lives on in gyms worldwide. But Ziz never got to see it. He never got to turn 30, never got married, never had kids, never got to actually make it in life. He became immortal by dying young. 10 legends, 10 different stories, but one ending. Some died from pushing too far. Some died from mental collapse. Some died doing everything right. And some died because they didn't know their body was already broken. But they all died for the same reason. They believed the stage was worth more than their life. Bodybuilding is called a sport, but maybe it's time we stop pretending. Because in what sport do the athletes keep dying in their 20s, 30s, and 40s? In what sport is the mortality rate this high? In what sport do we celebrate people destroying themselves and call it dedication? These men sacrificed everything to look superhuman. And in the end, it cost them the one thing that actually mattered, their humanity.